Welcome back to Fear and Beer, a Halloween Horror Nights podcast. Join us as we venture year-round into the fog.
Make sure you give us a like and a follow on your podcast platform of choice. Also, be sure to check out our YouTube page where we upload every episode in its video format, and maybe a few other surprises as well.
Make sure you're following us on social media to keep up to date with our newest haunted content.
I'm Nick.
I'm Seamus.
I'm Jamie.
Well, the rumors just keep on rumoring. We got a new one, fresh one. We haven't talked about on the pod this time around, and we figured it's kind of it's time. Let's make some commentary. Question? I don't know. Let's just talk about it. The biggest rumor that has changed. We've kind of adjusted a couple things. We'll get into it. I know I'm being very vague. We just kind of threw this episode together. Obviously, we're talking about Fallout. The big news came out last week that Fallout was seemingly replacing The Last of Us Part 2 at Halloween Horror Nights. Now, of course, this is, we use the word replace, which is seemingly to kind of confirm that The Last of Us was here. It was never confirmed. It's nothing's technically replacing anything since nothing is confirmed at this point. But up to this point right now, that is where the recent rumors are. So we're going to kind of dive into Fallout a little bit, talk about the games, talk about the video games and the TV show. I finally caught up on that, and we'll get into that. But me and Seamus kicking it old school tonight. Got a couple new little setups. He's got a little green screen. I moved the lights. And also I'm rocking this cool little hat. Not to plug it, but this is a Fear and Beer hat I found on our TeePublic page. I didn't know we could make hats. Pretty cool. Yeah, you can print hats on TeePublic. How to exactly get there, I can't tell you. Just go, I think, scroll down to the bottom, and it should be an option that says like more items or something like that. And you can, only certain designs can do that, but I think they're having a sale. So if you want to head over there to our TeePublic page, you can go to our all links page on our Instagram. You can find TeePublic and kind of go get some swag there. But before we dive into Fallout, I got a beer. I found a beer in the back of the fridge. I have no idea when I bought this beer. And it's not even a beer. It's a seltzer, but it's hard seltzer. It's from Angry Chair. No idea when I bought this. It looks cool. I'm guessing I bought it. I asked around the roommates and nobody else remembered it. But this is a peanut butter and jelly seltzer. No idea how it's going to taste.
It's probably been in there for like 2 years.
Probably. There's a good chance this is not good. But it is a gluten-free hard seltzer. And all it says in the details on Untappd is, does not contain nuts.
Good.
That wasn't my first thought in a peanut butter jelly seltzer, but ooh, this is very, very red, like dark red. Ooh, the smell. If you're watching on YouTube, I can't really move it too much because it's pretty full glass, but this thing is like dark. It just looks like jelly. Okay, not bad. It's definitely more jelly than peanut butter. I don't think it's gone bad. It's fairly refreshing, but it doesn't have any, with seltzer, like you expect all the like carbonation. There's really not carbonation. This is a pretty flat seltzer. I don't know if they were going for that or not, but that's seemingly where it stands. So let's get into Fallout. Seamus, how much of these games have you played? Because I'm not a huge gamer.
Well, let's see. I've played all of them. 4 more than anything else. That's the well, I guess I shouldn't say the most recent. It's the most recent solo version of the game. Fallout 76 came out a few years ago now at this point, but it's more of an online role-playing game. It's the same basic premise, but you play online with like real people. But it all follows the same storyline. nuclear attack on the United States, you're generally in some sort of area, some sort of setting within the states somewhere, and you fight irradiated monsters, irradiated humans, real humans. Very post-apocalyptic. So I know that we've railed against post-apocalypse themed anything over the last couple of years, and I know we're not super hyped about anything that happens to be post-apocalypse. So that's one unfortunate aspect of it. But I think that there are certain aspects within the universe of Fallout that could be used effectively for a house. So to answer your question, I played the games a ton. I probably put 600-700 hours into Fallout 4 by itself. I loved that. I love that version. I still play it to this day, even though it's been out for 10 years, 12 years now at this point. Fallout New Vegas is also a very fond memory of mine as well. So is it you or Jamie that has a Fallout New Vegas tattoo?
I have New Vegas on my leg.
Okay.
So I have the Vegas, welcome to Las Vegas sign, but I just put New Vegas on.
Yeah, I wasn't sure because I know you said you don't play the game, and Jamie, I don't think would ever have a video game tattoo.
No, she's never played it. So I remember playing New Vegas more so back in the day when I got this, 10, 15 years ago. I played it a little bit and I was kind of into it, and then I was also getting tattooed at the time, so I was like, fuck it, I'm doing a gambling sleeve, let's just throw New Vegas in there instead of Las Vegas. I don't live in Vegas, that I have more connections to this than that, and it's one of those things. Once you start getting tattooed, it doesn't matter, you just get whatever you want. But yeah, so I downloaded Fallout 4 the other day just because I forced myself to finally finish the TV series, which we'll get into the series as a whole, so I'm sure we'll talk spoilers, but damn good series. I did enjoy it the first time I watched it. I forget when they released it, but I just must have had a bunch of other stuff going on, and I just sort of
the TV show?
I forget when it. So it was during horror nights.
It was relatively recent. I think it was August, something like that. I think it was August that it came out. Okay, I watched it the first week it dropped for the most part.
That makes sense. So I watched the first two, I remember, and then I think life just kind of happened. We had a lot going on, and obviously with horror nights, but stuff with Daisy, there was just a lot of bullshit.
You had a lot of things going on at the time, so.
And I forgot. I just never went back to it. It's one of those things. We're in a day and age now where with streaming and shows and releases, if you miss it, the new wave comes in so quick.
Before you even realize it came out 2 years ago, and you're like, man, I haven't watched this, and that happens. So makes sense. The show is phenomenal, and not just if you're a Fallout fan. If you're a fan of the game, obviously the world, you're gonna fall right into it and probably enjoy it. I'm sure there are aspects of it you may not like, but for the most part, it's probably the best form of non-video game media, if that makes any sense. I know a lot of video game movies are trash, a lot of video game shows aren't very good.
Halo,
generally things that come out that are based on a video game that aren't a video game aren't end up not being very good, and this is a not that. This is definitely, it stands on its own, while also giving a ton of fan service to those that are already fans of the show Fallout. For example, I sat and actually watched this entire show with my wife, who hates anything in general, just hates media in general, doesn't watch TV, doesn't watch movies, unless it's a kid's show or a kid's movie, animated movie. She finds very little to like in a lot of that stuff. So she actually recognized what it was because I played the game a ton. So was actually somewhat interested in it. It is pretty violent. So if you're not a violence fan, obviously you're not going to like it. Now, granted, I'm preaching to the choir here. I mean, I don't think anybody listening to us would say that, I'm too squeamish to watch violence. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why you're going to Horror Nights, but I digress. But the show is really good. The game obviously is very good. And I'm sure we're going to talk about how we feel a house could work and what could go into it. So I don't want to jump ahead, but both are very, very, very good. Just a little bit of a background on the game. I mean, the originals, I think the first two. Yeah, I think the first two, and there may have been DLC with it. And granted, I was young when the first two came out, like somewhat, like quite young. They came out as isometric adventure games, like RPG games, so it wasn't like what you recognize. Most people recognize it as like the first person shooter games, which is what the last few of them have been. Has been open world first person shooter RPG style, um, solo storytelling. Whereas the first couple of games were more isometric, looked almost like a real time strategy game. If you know what those like Red Alert or Command and Conquer, except you're controlling one character. And then it kind of evolved from there to become a much more large world. It just grew from there, and the lore kind of built out. And in each game, you got to kind of see how are certain cities and certain places in the country affected by the bomb drops. So, like you might play one version like 3 was set in DC, and 4 was set in Boston, and 76 is set in Virginia. New Vegas is obviously set in a fictional Las Vegas, not Las Vegas. So you get to kind of see like how each area was affected by it, and then at the same time, all the characters in building up those stories of how they survived and how they currently live in a post-apocalyptic world. And of course, there's obviously a ton of interesting and unique bad guys or monsters that were obviously created from actual existing animals in the world or whatever it might be. So that's kind of cool too, is to kind of see like how did they bastardize this particular like creature into a monstrous enemy.
Very body horror, what I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, some of it's kind of body horror. Some of it's definitely like, knowing. Obviously, how I'm not a bug person. The first time you fight a irradiated cockroach, basically a rad roach is what they call them. Excuse me. So the first time you see one of those, and you're like, "Oh my god, I just killed a cockroach the size of a small dog." That's pretty horrifying in its own right. But that's what makes it, I think, for me, cool is taking those aspects of that world and mixing it with those traditional RPG elements where you're building a character and creating a story for your own character. And I've always been really drawn to that. So I love the Fallout universe. It's definitely something that I can actually probably see myself getting super hyped up for. Like, I know that this so far what we've seen, nothing has really been like, man, I'm stoked for this season because like this rumor or that rumor. This rumor is that rumor for me, where it's like I heard this and I was like, oh, I hope this is true. I'm not holding my breath. I know that rumors are rumors and they come from a lot of different places, but it's definitely something that I think for the first time in the last couple of seasons that I've been like, oh, okay, like now I'm on board. You piqued my attention.
Yeah,
essentially.
Yeah, so I guess I was gonna say to start, but we've already sort of started. But to start with this, like where this rumor, Insider Legacy came out and had said maybe last week or a week and a half ago at this point that this was the recent rumor is that this is kind of, and like I said to start, replacing The Last of Us. The Last of Us at this stage we can just say was probably not happening. Replace is a weird word when you're talking about rumors because that would imply that it was definitely there. We don't know that. So this is sort of filling the void of what maybe people thought was The Last of Us, being that, we got a post-apocalyptic video game turned TV series. Obviously, your mind immediately goes to Last of Us because we've had that before. That would make sense. But then kind of swerving us now and saying, actually, we're leaning towards the fact that it is Fallout. So that's where this all sort of kind of came from. And obviously, Legacy, we have a pretty good track record with following their stuff. So now I guess it comes to the question of, do we do video game or TV series? Obviously, we had this discussion 2 years ago with The Last of Us, and it ended up being more so, I think, the video game. Because even in the like posters and stuff, it says like Naughty Dog presents and stuff like that. So being that you have the knowledge of like pretty much all the games at this point, and a question for the games too, it's all like one universe, right? Like these are all just different locations at the same event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
Okay.
essentially, it's. I mean, some people may think they may or may not 100% agree on that. Like, I know that like certain they don't go in a particular order. So like Fallout 1 versus Fallout 2 versus Fallout 3 versus Fallout 4, so on and so forth. They don't necessarily all follow like one distinct timeline.
Mhm.
They all kind of go. They jump between times in post the bomb dropping. Like obviously, 4 you start in the intro, like prior to the bombs dropping. You're obviously selected to be in a vault. You go to the vault when the bomb drops. Turns out you actually get flash frozen for 200 years, and you come out of your frozen state, 220 or so years in the future. And obviously everything's changed. Whereas in certain games, it's strictly after the bombs drop, like almost instantly afterwards, you come out of the vault. And there's just different stories. And I don't remember all of the early ones as well as I do the more recent games. But yeah, generally, to answer your question, for the most part, it is taking place in one entire universe, one entire timeline or universe.
Okay, yeah, because Fallout 4, like you said, like you're kind of 200 years ahead, but it's all 200 years after the same bomb bombs
Yes, yeah,
that took
it's the
place.
same lead up to it. So
Okay,
so
all
like
right,
all the games will reference like the same types of things. Like the Battle of Alaska is referenced in a bunch of them because prior to the bombs drop, they were at war with China, and there was a battle in Alaska somewhere. And then obviously that's why the bombs are dropped. China ends up dropping the bombs. We end up retaliating, and obviously the world ends. But generally, it's all the same rough timeline. I don't know if it's necessarily 100% beat by beat set up that way because obviously these games come out so many years after the other ones, and when the game changes developer hands and that sort of thing, like stories tend to shift a little bit. But yeah, more or less, it's the same
and
timeline.
that's cool because like with the TV series now shifting into that, this again can just be another storyline that was from the same boss, so it can all be the same
Mm-hmm.
universe. It doesn't. It's not like
Yeah,
a
and I don't know.
reimagining or whatever.
I haven't necessarily seen anything that explicitly states the show's in the same universe as the games. It may be its own thing set in the same like the same story. Um, but then again, I could be wrong. So there could be someone out there smarter than me that could tell us. But um, it does follow the roughly the same idea, and I think a lot of it takes influence from the video games. So obviously, they reference a lot of the vaults in the show. They reference a lot of things that have to do with Vault Tech, the company that does it, how they've worked with the government to create a bunch of like messed up experiments to be run on most people that are in vaults. So it does follow that story. A lot of the same beats happen. Obviously, we have Vagul in it,
Hmm.
who very much looks like the Lone Wanderer from Vault New Vegas, even though you don't really see the Lone Wanderer. It's the same idea. Dog Meat, which is the dog from 4, he's in this one. That's the dog that travels with the ghoul. Try not to give too much away.
Yeah,
Obviously, the Vault Dwellers, specifically
yeah,
the ones that come out of the vault after the bombs drop, and are kind of like deer in the headlights because they all they've ever known is living underground. So it takes a lot of those same story beats, and it does a really good job of showing that on on the big screen or small screen, whatever you want to call it.
yeah. So I guess would you prefer? And again, it's kind of tough because, like you said, there's each game is sort of a different location, and including the series, it's a different location. So there's not. If is there a particular adaptation you'd like to see, or just Fallout World,
No, I
like
think I'd
just get the vaults, get dwellers, get ghouls. That's
yeah,
it.
I'd prefer it to just be a Fallout house, if that makes sense. Like, don't set it based on any particular game or particular episode of the show or the show in general. Like, I mean, I wouldn't be upset if they followed, like, say, for example, the show and they had actual like characters from the show in it, and
Your Lucy, your Maximus.
yeah, if like exactly. So if they were to do that, I wouldn't be upset. But at the same time, I'd rather them just kind of just have it be nondescript. Like I would love to see them do like you start in a vault and like you kind of as you're walking, as you're walking in, you're actually walking. It looks like you're actually walking out of a vault, essentially. So like you kind of go through the big door, and it goes, and like it looks like the big like the Fallout gear door or whatever, and it does its thing, and they can give it like its own number. They come up with their own vault number.
Vault
and the idea,
666.
right?
Vault
and
34.
the idea, right? And the idea would be, well, exactly, Vault 34 or something like that, because obviously it's HHN. So, but then the idea is that the story would be that us, the guests, are actually like dwellers who are leaving the vault for the first time after the bombs have dropped. And obviously we were born in the vaults. We've never been out in the world. And then the whole house is just us going through various scenes from the vault through irradiated wherever. It can be anything. Even if they wanted to be like irradiated Orlando, Florida, because we're in Orlando, like, that would be kind of fun. But at the same time, it doesn't have to be that. It could just be any random post-apocalyptic thing. It's just that it has to have a lot of those recognizable features of the world of that Fallout world. So you have to have like the iconic monsters like rad roaches and at least one, I don't know how they would do it. It's a very big monster, but the death claw, you have to at least do one death claw.
Yeah. I just killed a death claw finally.
Yeah, but they're like, we're talking like, we were worried about FNAF characters being put in a house. Like, this thing is supposed to be like 9.5 feet tall. It's a big like dragon looking monster. It's basically evolved from those. This is a very specific type of lizard. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they have to do that entirely. They could almost come up with maybe their own monsters. So, for example, let's say like we actually are leaving in a radiated vault in Orlando, Florida. Turns out there was a vault underneath Universal Studios, and Universal Studios had built a Vault-Tec vault. And then as you come up, you could take specific fauna from Orlando and make it volatized or created like a Fallout thing. So like the stupid looking little Anuli lizards that we have down here.
Oh yeah.
Like just have like a bunch of monsters that look like irradiated Anulis that are like eating people. Like that would be funny. Obviously rad roaches work because we get cockroaches here like you wouldn't believe. But there's a number of things that have to hit. And then on top of that, you have to have like the Brotherhood. So you have to have at least one person or a few people that are like dressed like Brotherhood soldiers or up in dressed in power armor. Again, can they do that in a house? Because power armor is huge. They could at least build like some sort of set piece, kind of like how they have like the puppetry, and have like almost a stationary suit of power armor that looks maybe empty, or it could be open and somebody gets into it and it shuts and it does the whole noise and stuff, and it doesn't really do anything because they can't. But or like they have stilt walkers. Like they could find a way to do like the stilt walkers and make them look like they're in power armor, which would be really sick. And I know that everybody listening that's a Fallout fan like I am, they're geeking out right now because they're like, yeah, oh my god, yeah, that'd be sick. But like, I'm saying all these terms. If you don't know what the game, if you've ever played the game or seen the show, you're not going to know what I'm talking about. But
yeah,
a lot of those things would be sick. And then obviously the ghouls, feral ghouls are a great actor, a great scare actor option. I know that there was some concern, like so when we posted the rumor on Instagram, we did get a few comments about like, how is this horror? Like, does this really fit? The game itself isn't necessarily the horror genre, but it's one of those deals where there's enough elements to it that make it scary or shocking or like it has moments like that. And there are times where like you'll do certain missions when you go into like a vault, for example, and it's definitely like done up as like a horror mission. Like it's supposed to be scary. It's supposed to spook you. Not the entire thing. It's very self-aware. It's very meta in some ways, and a lot of the jokes and stuff that are hidden within like some of the humor that's hidden within the game is usually based in the absurdity of the situation, which is really fun. So there's a lot of ways they can play with that too when it comes to telling the story. So there's just a number of things that they have to hit to make it worth it, but I think that could be done as long as they do introduce some of those things. Like for example, like when you said they did a Silent Hill house once, right?
Yeah.
So like as long as they had certain icons from that series, like Pyramid Head or the nurses, there's certain elements to that fans of the product are going to want to see. Even with like The Last of Us a couple years ago, wasn't a huge fan of the house, but at least it felt like you were in the Last of Us universe because you recognized the monsters, you recognized Ellie and Joel and other characters from that
Bloaters,
world.
clickers.
Right. And even for those that like just watched the show and had no real interest in playing the game, they still could get something out of it because it was very faithful to the source material. Same with this. As long as it's faithful to the source material, at least the source elements of the material, then it'll work. It doesn't necessarily, and like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to follow the story beats of an existing game or the show itself.
Yeah, it's one of those things too where like that whole question of is it horror, I think is sort of redundant at this point. You know, you look at some of the stuff
Yeah.
we've had in the past. Obviously, the biggest example of that was The Weekend, right? Is it
Right.
horror on its face value? Like, probably not. But can you work it into a haunted house? Clearly, yes.
Yeah.
Look at other stuff. You know, is a 1950s bug chemical killing expo necessarily horror? No, I'd say no. But then we got bugs eaten alive. You know, is anything with like a campground with potential Bigfoots around, like, is that necessarily horror? I mean, I guess there's elements that could be scary in it. Yeah, sure. But I wouldn't say like, oh yeah, campgrounds like in the 50s and 60s, that's scary. No,
I think
there's things you can add to it to make it horror.
Yeah, we casually, I think the idea of horror itself has kind of broadened over however many years, and it encompasses a lot more than just necessarily what we would think of as horror. Obviously, sci-fi is a massive part of it now, and I think a lot of what we get is more sci-fi based than horror based, because a lot of sci-fi. Sorry, my camera's not staying focused. You know, a lot of what sci-fi is based in some base level horror, even if it's not directly horrific. There are ideas that are scary, hard to wrap your head around. Like, for example, 2001: A Space Odyssey, great movie. Would not consider it horror,
No.
but there are a lot of aspects to that movie that are horrific because the ideas that it presents and the situations that it presents can be pretty terrifying, especially if you find certain aspects of that scary. Same with Fallout. Like, I hate bugs. Bugs generally aren't scary, but for me, if I see a gigantic dog-sized cockroach coming at me, I'm gonna piss my pants.
Yep.
That's just that's just a fear that I have. You know what I'm saying? So with this, it works, I think, and in a lot of ways, like, not everything has to be so much, booga booga booga, I'm a monster, I'm here to scare you. It can be like a human ally type character who is supposed to be like on your side, who can pop out of a out of a boo hole or whatever and scare you when they're trying to get your attention. Do you know what I'm saying? So like, you're walking, say, through the Fallout and the shelter or whatever, and like, a Fallout a vault dweller comes popping out of a corner in their vault suit.
Yep.
And they're not supposed to be like horrific in any way, but they're scary because they startle you. Like, that's the whole point of a house. So does it have to necessarily be in the horror genre to work? No. I think like you said, we've seen that. Like, there's been plenty of examples of that working. And I think and I don't blame certain, opinions of, or at least, let me reword that. I don't necessarily mean blame, but I can understand some of those viewpoints where I think for some fans of the event, they just want to come and see all of the IPs that they grew up watching, in the horror genre. They want to see your traditionals, maybe your Universal Monsters house, things that are traditionally horror. So when they hear something that's like not traditionally a horror property or a horror source material, they aren't immediately on board. But for those individuals, I would say that, like, I wouldn't necessarily worry about it immediately, because like Universal, for all their worth, do a really good job of making things work. I hated the Dragon's House, hated it, but I appreciated the work that went into it and what they were able to accomplish and the story they were trying to tell, and I understood why people liked it, and I respect that people liked it. the same with this. I think that with something like this, it's not necessarily what you would classify as horror, but there are enough elements within it that can be scary, and Universal will do a good enough job of melding that world together. So
Yeah. And we've seen it 1,000 times of those, like you mentioned, those non-scary people acting as a scare, like the vault dwellers. Like we have to have some people in those blue and yellow jumpsuits that pop out. Kind of like how right when we get into major suites, you have the chaperone who comes out and is like, "It's the kids, get out of here." And it's like,
yeah,
that was a scare, but and obviously he had like candy canes and stuff suck into him. But no, same situation. You have a vault dweller that's got like an arm ripped off or whatever, and be like, "You
right.
gotta
Or he's
go." They're
fighting a monster or
infiltrating.
something, or he's
Yeah,
getting eaten by something, or
the
there are
cockroach.
feral ghouls attacking. Like,
Yeah. So it can very much so work in that sense. So I'm down for it. I think also going off that trend of we keep tying stuff that we're getting now to past properties in that mindset of like maybe this is um ways to save some money by like bundling up some old houses and just kind of, well, we could use this from here and this from here.
Mhm.
You can use stuff from the Bugs house because it has that 50s aesthetic, whether it's just props or whatever.
Mhm.
But you can use some stuff from Last of Us or Descendants of Destruction, and you can
Yep.
kind of use little props here and there to kind of fill some of the not big Fallout-esque pieces. If you need some 50s style decor, well, there you go.
Right.
You got it from Bugs. It's just sitting in storage somewhere, whether it's just a chair or a table or whatever. But after watching the show, I was definitely more on board with this. I'm definitely more on board with this than The Last of Us Part 2. Just because I even said it on one of the comments on Instagram. You know, Post-apocalyptic, I'm sort of like, just we've talked about this. I'm sort of just done with that category for a little bit because it has been done in multiple different iterations. But if the options were this or Last of Us 2, I would absolutely take Fallout just because I do enjoy it more. I have played some of it in the past, and I've watched both shows, Last of Us and Fallout, but I did probably like the Fallout better because there was so much variety in there. You went, with the categories, right? You have the vault dwellers, you have the vault, you have the whole story and mystery in there. But then you also have, the ghouls, and then you have people just kind of living up top, and then you have the Brotherhood. There's different layers in that story versus Last of Us, where it's just kind of like pillagers, the Fireflies, and stuff like that. I felt like there was a different variety in society. So if we have to kind of pick between the two and get a post-apocalyptic, I'd also rather get something that isn't a sequel to something we've already seen. So it's different, whether it's
Yeah.
different in setting and character. Either way, I'll take whatever's new and fresh, just to
Yeah.
at least say I've seen something different. So what so we kind of talked about how you would do this as a house. So you would sort of start in the vault and have us essentially being the vault dwellers in this story.
I think so. I mean, I know that there's been talk, and I think even Jamie mentioned, like, doing a house set just in a vault. I think would be fine, but it would get too boring too quickly. I think you need to stop doing that. You need to have varying elements to it and varying scenes. I think that would be fun. I think there's ways of, like I've said before, trying to do um, daytime horror. So like there are certain rooms that look like you're out in the daytime. Will they do that? I don't know. I mean, you can still do plenty of night scenes. We've seen it before in a lot of houses where it feels like you're outside. Like for example, with the Chupacabra's house, where it felt like you were walking through like an outdoor village at night. Same with Blood Moon, felt like you were walking through an old village. Goblin's Feast felt a lot like walking through various indoor and outdoor elements. I think they can do that with the Fallout, and I would like to follow the story of us being dwellers who are now exiting the world and experiencing all of the horrors that the world has now created because of the nuclear bombs being dropped. I think that would be fun. I don't really. I mean, I could, like I said before, I could see them doing a house more specified and drilled down to specifically like a vault situation. But I just, for me, that would almost be too boring, and I'd rather than not
I
do that.
agree. I think it
So
has to be. I think you have to get out of the vault. I think vault is really cool, and I'd love to be in there. But like watching the series and just playing the first little bit of Fallout 4, the Red Rocket gas station seems to be a fairly
mhm.
prominent, like cool setting. You could do something like that. Um, like you mentioned with Deathclaw, I think Deathclaw, you could. We saw it last year with the puppetry of A Quiet Place.
Yeah.
As long as you're not, putting 13 Deathclaws and that's the main villain and that's it, and those are all just puppets. I'm cool with
Yeah,
like
and that's the
one or
thing. Like
two puppets.
there's too much in the world to do that. Like there's just too many things to use. Like I can't imagine they would strictly stick. It's not like A Quiet Place where you have one main bad guy. Like you have one thing, and that's the monsters that come from space. Fallout, there's anything could be an enemy because who knows what got irradiated? Like what animal got irradiated? I mean, I want to see a number of things. I'd love to see them, put like a Brahmin in there and have like a Brahmin puppet, and it spooks you by mooing at you, and it's a two-headed cow. Like that would be fun. And have it be like, have it be a roaming caravan. So like there's people with the cow, and it's got all the stuff that they're selling, and they kind of come out from behind it going, "What can I offer you?" And
Yeah.
like scare you, and have it be like a ghoul. Like have it be like a not a feral ghoul, like a normal ghoul, human that's still human, but they're obviously irradiated, and like that could spook you. Things like that, and like I said, I would be really down if they were like, we're gonna set this in Orlando and base a lot of the monsters on things that we see every day here, in the state of Florida, like for animals and that sort of thing. Like that, there's so many avenues they could go with it to be not only creative but also inspired and reminiscent of the source material. So they don't have to necessarily copy everything directly, but as long as they have varying things that you would recognize, like a Deathclaw has to be in there. You have to find
Yeah.
somebody to do a puppet Deathclaw, even if it's like just the Deathclaw's claw coming out from behind something to get you.
Yeah.
Would be enough to recognize it. I would rather them do the full get up, but obviously I can understand with limitations depending on the size and where they're putting it. It would be necessary. It wouldn't necessarily be easy. But yeah, there's a lot of things like you said, the Red Rocket garage gas stations. If we could have like a pseudo gas station with one of the nuclear powered cars that you see all over the game world, which are very iconic, very 50s style. Inspired by like that 50s bubble look. So like if you put things like that together that in there that make it look, make you feel like you're there, that would be really cool too. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's
I think the point you made too of doing it as like Orlando, I think that's a great selling point to get people excited and to do both coasts. If you did Fallout
yeah,
Orlando, Fallout Hollywood, you could do
right,
Hollywood for LA, and so that way the houses are the same but different, and it
exactly, yeah,
would lead people to want to do both
right,
coasts.
or at
It's
least
the best option.
opens up the option for them to do like Orlando this year and then Hollywood next year
Yeah.
if they didn't want to do both at the same time, but you could do
Mhm.
one and then the other. So they
Yeah.
also opens up that option for them as well.
Yeah, because it would be cool to like have, even though it's a big IP, have it personalized to each event, each coast. So that way, because that's one of my biggest things where people always ask, "Are we going to go to HHN Hollywood?" And like, I would love to. It's a big trip. It's tough for me to swing that, and it's tougher for me to swallow that being like, okay, well, if I go to Hollywood, I get to see all new scare zones and maybe two or three different houses, because other than that it's usually shared IPs. But if these IPs are somewhat varied between the two coasts at the time, then I'd be more apt to be like, oh yeah, I would want to go see that because it is different than ours, not just in the sense that the rooms are slightly designed different. Like, no, it's kind of a different house with different characters. So I mean, I had the biggest things I would really want for this, obviously, like I want the stuff in the vault, but I want that very like I'd almost want like bomb going off information too. Like I'd love to see like the classic TVs or the classic radio playing like information that it's going off, and like I want that timepiece. That's really
Yeah,
what I want.
and I mean they obviously already have a at least for fans of the property, a very iconic like please stand by screen that you see in like in every game, and a lot of TVs have it on there. It's very just unique to the universe. Like, it's very, if you see that as a Fallout fan, you recognize that as Fallout. So you could have that on TVs or have it on a TV as you're leaving the vault or as you're going through a blown up house or something like that or whatever. You would see some of that stuff. Obviously, we have to have a Vault Boy.
Yeah.
So whether that's like a picture, an image of him, or other items that have him, on it, because that he's very prominent within the world of Fallout. So you have to see some of that stuff as well.
It would be interesting too if like we sort of found a way to do the beginning of Fallout 4, just because I've literally only played the beginning, so that's why it's fresh. But like if we found a way to like you're in a house normal, and then you're walking out of the house or walking and you're getting pulled emergency style into the vault, and then in one of the hallways it's like you just play sounds of freezing and you do a lot of blue lights and fog, and that almost like is supposed to make you seemingly go through the cryo freezing, and then you come out of that into sort of a dilapidated vault. You come back out, and then when you come back out, you're back into the same exact house you were in the beginning, but now it's older and torn apart. It's almost like you're walking through the time lapse.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, kind of gives you the feeling of almost like being cryogenically frozen and then unfrozen.
Yeah. And you can have
that'd be kind of cool.
You can have them rushing you, the vault, the people behind the vaults, like rushing you into the vault, get in the vault, and they make it, you walk through the big vault as like you're almost how like A Quiet Place had that almost like second entrance. You kind of had that little facade, but then you walk in and it's like a quiet place.
Yeah, it would be kind of cool.
This
like,
is where it starts.
As you're like entering or whatever, and you do like a voiceover recording, and I want it to be like Mike Aiello's voice, and it's just him saying, "This is the Overseer. Welcome to Vault 34 or whatever," and like kind of going through that deal, and just it'd be a nice little Easter egg tie into it.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be, if we have it, it's 100% Vault 34 or Vault 2025 or whatever year it is.
Yeah, something along those lines.
It's for sure one of those vaults. So. The Brotherhoods are the trickier ones. I would say Stilt Walkers. I don't know if they're that tall though. They're probably 9 feet. So
the power armor, I think it's generally like when you're in power armor, like it gives you a few extra inches. Like you are somewhat tall. They are somewhat tall. I mean, they're not like incredibly tall, but taller than just a normal human. Mm-hmm. So you could do it with Still Walkers. I would rather, again, like I said, just have kind of like it be like one area, one puppet-esque type thing. It's like a stationary suit of power armor that moves and talks to you, or you see somebody get into it or whatever. Something along those lines. It doesn't necessarily have to be like fully functioning costumed characters that are walking around, because that would be kind of difficult to do and pull off. Especially make it look convincing too, because they're supposed to be basically big mechanical suits, and if it doesn't really give off that like look, it's going to be almost too cheesy. So I'd rather them just kind of do a big stationary get up that looks like a suit of armor, or looks like a suit of power armor, but doesn't necessarily function as such.
Yeah, the more I talk about it and the more I get into the game, I'm going to play the game even more. I am excited for this one. This is an IP that I don't think a lot of people ever necessarily suspected would be coming, but have sort of always wanted. It's kind of like Fallout and BioShock are sort of the two video game IPs that a lot of people have been asking for, but it's sort of always
BioShock would be
on
cool
the fringe.
Too.
It's sort of like always like maybe, but maybe not.
And I think we were like, at least early last year, we were talking about how there was a Fallout show coming out, and we kind of said like, what if they did a Fallout house? We did talk about it a little bit, but yeah, like not many people would have brought this up as the first thing they thought about when they said, let's do a game house. I mean, obviously we've had Resident Evil before. I think we've had a few other things, Silent Hill, but again, those kind of became movies and took a whole different life of, like, basically took on an entire life of their own. Like, and then the houses were based on those movies and that property of the movie rather than the game itself. Now, not to get into a completely different discussion, but like Silent Hill, at least the movie was somewhat like respectful or at least it felt close to the source material. Whereas like Resident Evil was almost entirely different. I mean, the same basic premise, but almost entirely different altogether when it comes to like the games versus the movies. So it would be nice to kind of see them really follow the material with Fallout from the beginning. It'd be kind of hard to like do Fallout without doing that. Like, I don't know how they would really pull it off to be like, we're going to do Fallout, but we're going to give you a whole bunch of crap that we came up with. Like, it doesn't really make sense because there's too much about the game that is very much like that's from Fallout. Like, you see something from Fallout, and like you know what it is. Obviously, when they made the show, they did say like a lot of the making of stuff, like Bethesda, they gave the studio a whole bunch of like actual designs and 3D printing documents and stuff like that to like make a lot of the stuff that you can get in the game. So everything you see in the show is like true to game or true to game world. Like they didn't come up with anything really on their own. They just took everything that the game developer gave them and said, this is what this is. This is the dimensions for this. This is what this looks like. Which I think is really cool because like if that's what you're looking for, that's what you're going to get. It's like why I'll never get like a true to life Doom movie because they hate me. But I guess we'll see. Maybe now that Bethesda has done successful, games to movie or games to show, we'll get a Doom show or a Doom movie.
You didn't like the one with The Rock?
No, I did not. That movie was terrible.
But yeah, so I guess that's where we kind of stand right now on Fallout. Let us know what you guys think. I think this would be a fun, welcome addition. I think that they would like absolutely clean up in the merch department when it comes to Fallout. I think this would be a gigantic moneymaker, whether it's like you said, the little what's the Fallout guy's name?
Vault Boy.
Vault Boy, like the Vault Boy, the new colas, like
that's a whole different discussion altogether. But yeah, there's so many merchandising opportunities with it. Like a Vault Boy popcorn bucket, those would sell out immediately.
The Pip Boys,
yeah, Pip Boys. I mean, I remember when Fallout 4 dropped and they had like a special edition where you could get an actual functioning Pip Boy. You got an app on your phone and you stuck it in the Pip Boy and it acted like a Pip Boy and it functioned with the game. So if you wanted to like maneuver like things on your Pip Boy, you could do it on your actual Pip Boy, and it goes to the game. I'm a nerd, but like you know what I'm saying. Like you could sell so many things. And they do Duff Beer. They could easily do Nuka-Cola. You get Nuka-Cola, Nuka Platinum, Nuka, Diet Nuka-Cola. Like there's so many things you could do with it that like I'm just talking myself into it more and more now that we're saying it, because I just want those glass rocket bottles, which are really actually hard to find, hard to make. This is going completely off subject, but there is a YouTube channel that I'm a fan of called How to Drink. He is awesome. He does a lot of like movies and game themed videos, and one of them he actually made like Nuka-Cola with the original creator of the original Fallout. Like it's really cool. I know that's off topic, but like there's just there's just so many ways to make this work. So I hope that it's real. I'm not holding my breath because again, like I said in the beginning, I think this might just be rumors that people are kind of wishful thinking for something other than The Last of Us, and I think I totally can understand that. So I'm hoping that it's more than just rumors, maybe there's something to this, because I definitely want to see this happen. Like this, like I said before, this would be my like, all right, sold, tickets bought, let's go. I can't wait. August 29th.
I can see this one happening. I really can. Maybe I'm talking myself a little bit more into it, but I do think it can happen. And selfishly, I kind of hope so, because maybe, just maybe, we might have a shirt design sort of Fallout inspired already. Just waiting.
Can neither confirm nor deny.
Just sitting in the chamber waiting to get launched out there. Potentially, maybe, just saying. And if it doesn't get announced, it's never going to see the light of day, and you can all blame Universal. That's how
we're just going to make them anyways, and you and I can wear them to the parks and go. Yeah.
Exclusive.
You could have had this. Just saying.
Could have had it. All right. Well, I think that wraps it up just because it was just the one rumor. So this Sunday, we're going to continue our Shutter Sundays. We're going to be diving into the Nicolas Cage Mandy.
Awesome. Such a good movie.
Yep, this is a fun one. So you have to come and check it out. It'll be streaming obviously wherever you're listening to us now. If it's not on a YouTube, but it's also going to be in video format on YouTube, which I throw some clips in over that. So make sure you're heading over to our YouTube page and subscribing over there. Hit the little bell, hit the little doodads. Make sure you're doing all that. Make sure you're following us on Instagram. We've been getting a lot of traction. I post a lot of really funny memes. That's my claim to fame right now. I am the HHN meme guy. So if you see something stupid or funny, just make sure you share it. Tell a friend, because we're just trying to get some traction out there. I love doing all this stuff, but I love even more when people can join in with us. So that's really all we got. Do you have any final thoughts for Fallout?
Nope. Just check the show out if you haven't yet, at least, because it's really good.
Mhm.
Otherwise, if you're a Fallout fan or just a gaming fan in general, hit us up. Let us know. Maybe we'll start doing some gaming content at some point in the future.
I'd love to find a way to do that so you can all watch me embarrass myself with how bad I am at games and how angry I get. We'll have to do a Smash controller counter on the bottom to see how many PS5 controllers I'm going to go through, and I'm going to have to start doing little tokens or whatever. You guys can buy me new controllers after I smash them from not knowing how to kill the stupid Deathclaw for 2 hours.
I'll put this much out there. Like, Fallout is a very non-rage inducing game for the most part. So that you can be safe to know. I mean, it's not like we're going to be streaming Madden or anything.
Oh, God, no.
Talk about Smash controllers, but
yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. Well, that wraps us up for this week. Until next time, this is Nick.
And this is Seamus.
Happy haunts.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Fear and Beer, a Halloween Horror Nights podcast. If you like what you heard, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on whatever streaming platform you are listening to us on. You can find us on all of our socials at Fear and Beer Pod.